one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it because you can.
From CBS News, President Trump, first day in office, has granted clemency to roughly 1,500 defendants who had been convicted of crimes on January 6, 2021, following through on his longtime promise to absolve those who participated in the attack on the U.S. Capitol of wrongdoing. The president's action comes on his first day back in the White House and just hours after he was sworn in for a second term. Mr. Trump, or President Trump, has repeatedly sought to downplay the events of January 6 when a mob of his supporters breached the Capitol in an effort to stop Congress from reaffirming Joe Biden's victory over him in the 2020 presidential election. President Trump extended clemency to those convicted of violent and serious crimes, including assaulting police officers and seditious conspiracy. He also ordered the Attorney General to dismiss all pending indictments related to the Capitol riot, essentially eradicating the Biden Justice Department massive effort to hold accountable those who participated in the assault. Quote, these are the hostages, approximately 1,500 for a pardon, full pardon, said the president during his remarks from the Oval Office. This is a big one, he said. This is huge. The president said he hopes those who remain incarcerated will be released immediately. His clemency includes 6 commutations, he said, though the proclamation released by the White House lists the names of 14 people and reduces their sentences to time served. Quote, these people have been destroyed. What they've done to these people is outrageous. There's rarely been anything like it in the history of our country. End quote. Now, President Trump lambasted the judges overseeing cases stemming from the January 6th attack and the prosecutors who brought charges as brutal. More than 1,600 people were charged as a result of their alleged conduct on January 6th, and at least 1,100 have had their cases adjudicated and received sentences, according to the Justice Department. More than 700 defendants completed their sentences or did not receive sentences of incarceration. More than 170 people were accused of using deadly or dangerous weapon, such as a fire extinguisher or bear spray, against police officers, prosecutors have said. There are roughly 300 prosecutions that remain pending against defendants who have been charged, the Justice Department said earlier this month. Nearly 60% of those were charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding law enforcement or obstructing those officers during a civil disorder, which are felonies. But as of this morning, Tuesday morning, the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia began seeking to end ongoing cases, citing President Trump's order granting pardons and commutations for offenses related to the Capitol attack, court filings show. Many January 6 defendants were charged with nonviolent misdemeanors, though some faced more serious offenses like conspiring to use force to resist the transfer of power. But President Trump's action appears to be sweeping, and among those expected to receive clemency is Enrique Tarrio, the former head of the far-right group the Proud Boys. He's serving a 22-year sentence after he was convicted in May of 2023 of charges including seditious conspiracy. His lawyer, Naeed Hassan, told CBS News. Now, Tarrio's family said last night that he was pardoned and released from prison and he would arrive on a flight to Miami this afternoon. Records from the Bureau of Prisons showed he remains incarcerated. Who had their sentences commuted? Well, Trump commuted the sentences of more than a dozen people, according to his proclamation, including Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the far-right group the Oath Keepers, who was sentenced to 18 years in prison for seditious conspiracy and other crimes. Kelly Meggs, the leader of the Florida chapter of the Oath Keepers, who was sentenced to 12 years behind bars. Kenneth Harrelson, a member of the Oath Keepers, who was convicted of obstruction of an official proceeding and other charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Thomas Caldwell, another Oath Keepers member, he was sentenced to time served. Jessica Watkins, a member of the Oath Keepers, who was sentenced to 8.5 years of incarceration. Roberto Menuda, an Oath Keepers member, there you go, convicted of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 54 months in prison. Edward Vallejo, another Oath Keepers member, you got it, received a 3-year sentence after he was found guilty of seditious conspiracy. David Morshall, an Oath Keepers member, convicted of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 3 years incarceration. Joseph Hackett, a member of Oath Keepers, who was sentenced to 42 months in prison after he was found guilty of seditious conspiracy. Ethan Nordian, one of the leaders, of the Proud Boys, who received a sentence of 18 years in prison after he was convicted of seditious conspiracy. Joseph Biggs, another Proud Boys leader, sentenced to 17 years in prison. Zachary Rell, another Proud Boys leader, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Dominic Pizzola, a Proud Boys member, sentenced to 10 years in prison and was seen on video smashing a Capitol window with a riot shield. Jeremy Bertino, a Proud Boys member who entered a guilty plea to seditious conspiracy. Boom. So the pardons cap a remarkable sequence of events that has played out since the 2020 election, when Mr. Trump, or President Trump, I should say, mounted a scheme to overturn its results to hold on to power for a second term, as alleged by federal prosecutors and House investigators. The plot culminated in the January 6th attack, as investigators said the president has spent weeks sowing doubt about the integrity of the 2020 election and urged his supporters in a speech outside the White House on January 6th to fight like hell and stop the steal. I remember that. The Justice Department has said more than 140 police officers were assaulted during the riot at the Capitol. The losses suffered as a result of the riot, including damage to the building and grounds, exceeded $2.8 million, according to the department. But 4 years after President Trump allegedly attempted to subvert the transfer of power, he has returned to the White House after defeating former Vice President Kamala Harris. He has the power now. In one of her final acts as vice president, she presided over the joint session this year that confirmed President Trump's victory. Keeping President Trump's promise to grant reprieves to those charged in connection with the riot, several defendants sought to have court action in their cases delayed in the wake of the election. The authority to issue pardons for federal offenses rests exclusively with the United States President under the Constitution, but presidents typically work with the Justice Department's pardon attorney to consider requests for clemency. Pam Bondi, the president's pick for Attorney General, was asked during her confirmation hearing last week whether she believed the January 6 defendants, who were convicted of assaulting law enforcement, should be given clemency, and said she would review each case and advise on a case-by-case basis if asked by the president to do so. Quote, I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country, she said. President Trump's decision is likely to stir anger from police officers who were injured during the January 6th attack, I guess so, and testify before the House committee that investigated the riot in 2022, as well as committee members themselves, some of whom are no longer in Congress. Meanwhile, judges on the federal district court in Washington, where the cases involving January 6 have been brought, have continued to resist efforts to lessen the severity of what transpired more than 4 years ago in the eyes of the public. No matter what ultimately becomes of the Capitol riots cases already concluded and still pending, the true story of what happened on January 6, 2021 will never change, says Senior Judge Royce Lamberth, who was appointed by President Ronald Reagan. And he said during a December sentencing just that. Now, Lamberth said that just as the president must make decisions on matters of clemency without interference from the coordinate branches, so too must our judiciary independently administer the laws and sentence convicted offenders. President Trump has repeatedly attacked those who investigated the January 6th assault and threatened to punish his political opponents, including former special counsel Jack Smith and the lawmakers who were on the House Select Committee that investigated the attack. Now, in anticipation of possible retribution by President Trump, Biden preemptively pardoned members of the January 6th Select Committee and its staff, as well as Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers who testified before the panel during his final hours in office. So it was kind of a run for your money. Biden's like, I'm going to pardon them. And Trump is like, well, I'm going to pardon all these other ones. But that was quite a lengthy story. I apologize, but we had to get through it. And the bottom line is the first thing the United States president does when he comes into office is pardon all those people who had his back on January 6, 2021. Some of the other things he said he's going to do, he's going to declare a national emergency at the Mexico-U.S. border. He's going to sign an executive order changing the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And he also commented on other things like gender. He said, look, all these places where they have other for genders, bathrooms and whatnot in government buildings, no, we're going to have male and female. That's what he said. He's also going to shut down mandates of electric vehicles. And Governor Newsom, I think, had touched on that, where California wanted to just go electric and get rid of gas-powered vehicles. And Trump said, no, our automakers are going to make the vehicle of your choice. If you want a vehicle that has gasoline, go buy it. There you go, guys. President Trump is back, and that is his first action: clemency.